We are here in Vietnam.
Yeah, this is one of few kind of medicine that you make like that.
Situated in God's favorite FPS map, Vietnam has a history of repelling or overthrowing almost all of the larger forces that want their grimy hands all over the country. So I want to talk about the times that Vietnam is probably the Giga Chan of Southeast Asia by basically destroying countries that are larger than they are. Now, before we start, it's important to note that Vietnam did not win all of the time. I cannot include all the times that Vietnam won because there are so many. And sorry for my pronunciation of Vietnamese names and words. And now, without further ado, let's begin. Our first beef is with China, with the Han Dynasty. In the 1st century, the Han controlled the northern part of Vietnam. Now, there are these two noble sisters, Trung Chek and Trung Nhi. Trung Chek's husband was executed by the Han. The sisters were like, oh hell nah, and started a rebellion. They raised an army up to 80,000, most of them women by the way, and started winning over the Chinese forces. They declared independence and ruled Vietnam for 3 years. Unfortunately, the Chinese managed to get back on them and defeat the sisters. Some sources state that the sisters committed game over by drowning themselves on a river to avoid capture. Now that is a Chad way to go. Now, hope is not lost to Vietnam. The battle against the Chinese would continue. This time, the Southern Han was trying to reassert Chinese control over the Vietnamese again. But Ngoc Nguyen, a Vietnamese general, calls cap to the Southern Han. At the Bac Dang River, Ngoc's forces place iron-tipped stakes on the river. During high tide, the stakes are hidden. And when the tides lowered, the Han ships were maimed, trapping the incoming enemy forces. And they were attacked by the Vietnamese. The Southern Han lost half of their forces in the battle, and they retreated back to Guangzhou. Do I have to say, 10 out of 10 strategy. However, a different kind of force is incoming, a much larger and terrifying force than the Chinese. This wouldn't be a medieval Asian history video without encountering the Mongols. What's impressive here is the Vietnamese managed to repel the Mongol forces not once, not twice, but 3 times. Hey yo! First attempt was by Uruyang Kadai in 1258. The Mongols wanted to take Dai Viet in order to get a southern flank against the southern Song. And they also wanted the valuable trading ports of the Champa kingdom south of Dai Viet. So they invaded and captured the capital. So, led by this guy, the Vietnamese used scorched earth tactics and guerrilla warfare to force the Mongols out of the capital. Second attempt was by Kublai Khan of the Yuan dynasty, and then we get to Chang Hung Vao, who employed another scorched earth strategy and starved out the resources of the Mongols. With the help of the Champa kingdom, they once again win over the Mongols. Kublai Khan was furious and staged a third attempt. When the Mongol forces reached the capital, the Vietnamese forces retreated once more with their food and resources and left the Mongols starved out of resources once more. The Mongols decided to retreat back to China. However, guess where they were? That's right, the Mongols fell to the same trap in the Bac Dang River. The Mongols were absolutely destroyed and humiliated by the Dai Viet and the Champa. And then China is back, yay! Under the Ming Dynasty, which annexed Dai Viet in the early 1400s. Then this guy, Let Loi, a wealthy landowner from Lam Sơn, started an uprising against the Ming. Through strategy, tactics, and even guerrilla warfare, Let Loi was able to get victories over the Ming forces. Other families like the Qing and the Nguyen came to support Lê. And then by the Battle of Chi Lang, the Vietnamese had broken the Ming's will to fight, ensuring Vietnam's independence from China once more.
The champ is here!
I've mentioned the Champa Kingdom previously. They are a more Indian-influenced kingdom in the south rather than the Chinese-influenced Dai Viet up north. Champa and Vietnam had been beefing for a long time, and then in 1471, under the leadership of Emperor Le Thang Tong, a massive campaign was launched against the Champa kingdom. Dai Viet used the process of Nan Tien to invade the southern kingdom, reducing it to a small vassal state, and took their important trading routes. The Champa kingdom was destroyed, with their capital being captured, and thousands of their soldiers were slain. By the 17th century, Vietnam had fully annexed all of Champa's territory, ceasing the existence of the kingdom.
รู้กินเหล้า
Another nation Vietnam had conflicts with is Siam, modern-day Thailand. One of these conflicts is during the Tay Son Rebellion. Nguyen An, a surviving member of the Nguyen dynasty, sought refuge and support from the Kingdom of Siam, but Nguyen Hue, it's a different Nguyen, lured the Siamese fleet into the this river, a narrow and shallow river network, and used scorched earth tactics and ambushes, absolutely decimating the Siamese forces. Another conflict was during the Le Van Khoi Rebellion. Siam once again supported the rebel forces against the current emperor. Once again, Vietnam totally dunked the Siamese forces, successfully recapturing Cambodian territory. Give another W for Vietnam. But then, a Catholic baguette-eating nation has arrived at the ports of Vietnam.
Oh, qu'est-ce qu'ils m'ont fait? Et pourtant je l'ai bien sécurisé avec le...
Coming into the mid-19th century up to the mid-20th century, the French would occupy Indochina. Throughout the French colonization, the Vietnamese were introduced to Western technology, cuisine, education, and ideas, one of which is communism. Then during the Second World War, Japan occupied Indochina, cut off Chinese supply lines. In the midst of the chaos, this guy, the most famous Vietnamese person ever, Ho Chi Minh, founded the Viet Minh. The Japanese surrendered after the US threw 2 sons at them, then the French reoccupied Indochina after the war. Obviously your boy Ho ain't taking this, and wants independence from the French, and establish a communist government of Vietnam. And so, the First Indochina War begins. The Viet Minh received support from China and the Soviet Union against the French, who had support from the United States. But then, the colonized Viet Minh army managed to outdo the European power French army, with the most notable battle being at Dien Bien Phu. Vietnam got a massive victory for defeating a major European power. However, the country was split in half, with the communist north and the anti-communist south.
I'm doing hard farm work. Welcome to the rice field, motherfuckers.
Communists weren't particularly a fan of the split, so Ho Chi Minh created the Viet Cong to repel the US-backed South Vietnamese government. The government of Ngo Dinh Diem aren't really the nicest government ever, so many South Vietnamese had actually supported and joined the Viet Cong. And then the US lied about being attacked on the Gulf of Tonkin and used this as an excuse to conduct special military operations in South Vietnam, which includes bombing North Vietnam and Laos. And then President Johnson began deploying troops through the jungles of Vietnam to fight the commies. However, what they met was far more horrifying. The jungles are littered with snakes, booby traps, snake booby traps, trap doors, tripwires, and so much more horrifying. Not to mention the heavy vegetation and muddy roads that bogged down the advances of the Americans. The Vietnamese used the thick vegetation to hide and ambush the incoming American forces, and so much war crimes were committed on both sides. Protests ensued in the United States as they were caught lacking and lying through TV about the war, and support for the war was diminishing. In 1973, the US and North Vietnam negotiated on the Paris Peace Accords, leading to the withdrawal of US troops. But the war wasn't truly over. Because of Watergate,
I shall resign the presidency effective at noon tomorrow.
the US got a bit distracted, and then North Vietnam took advantage of this and invaded the South, unifying the two Vietnams once again. Massive W for Vietnam for literally defeating the strongest nation that time. West of Vietnam was Cambodia, under the Khmer Rouge, who were schizo-commies. The Khmer Rouge were the literal definition of evil, and they were causing trouble on the southern border with Vietnam. The Khmer Rouge have always been wary of their Vietnamese neighbors, and so they did what they do best. Vietnam, being the gigachad that they are, began an invasion in Cambodia to overthrow the demonic Khmer Rouge and their satan of a leader, Pol Pot, and they were successful. However, the People's Republic of China was an ally of the Khmer Rouge, because of course they are. They began to counter the Vietnamese and invaded their northern border, but even they were successfully repelled by the Vietnamese. China never learns, bruh. This would be the last major conflict Vietnam was involved with. It is important to note that while Vietnam scored many victories against bigger adversaries, they did however suffer big casualties both in men, resources, and money, which still affects Vietnam to this day. Now that the country is at peace, the latest W Vietnam got was a football match against Thailand. Congratulations! However, many issues still exist, such as with the Spratly Islands, which China also has a claim on. But bruh, China, how many times? In the end, if you're a major power wanting to invade Vietnam for whatever reason, just don't. I swear, when the entire world gets flooded, all that would remain is the island of Vietnam, bruh. May Vietnam live long and have a peaceful future. That's all for today. Thank you for watching.